It was supposed to be a quiet weekend. Just me, alone in the cabin, miles away from civilization. No phones, no internet, just peace and the crackling of the fireplace. I had been working too hard and needed to unwind, so the isolation seemed perfect until the whispers started. At first, I thought it was the wind. The cabin sat at the edge of the forest, and the thick trees swayed in the evening breeze. But no wind moves like that, whispering faint words, threading through the cracks in the wood, wrapping themselves around my ears. It didn't make sense. I turned off the lights, hoping the dark would quiet my imagination. I sat in the stillness, listening only to my own heartbeat. That's when I heard it again, a faint voice, barely audible but unmistakable. It called my name. My blood ran cold. I bolted to my feet, grabbing the flashlight from the table, sweeping its beam across the room. Nothing. No signs of anyone else. Just my reflection in the small, dusty mirror by the door, except it wasn't quite right. I froze. My reflection wasn't moving. My hands trembled as I stepped closer, staring into the glass. I was standing there, but the reflection wasn't doing what I was doing. It just stared back at me. Slowly, the reflection's lips curled into a smile, a sick, twisted grin that didn't match the terror I felt inside. Suddenly, a loud bang came from the back of the cabin, like something was pounding on the door. My heart raced as I turned to face the sound, but when I looked back at the mirror, the reflection was gone, completely. Panicking, I stumbled towards the kitchen, grabbing a knife from the counter. My hands were slick with sweat, the cabin's once cozy warmth now suffocating. Every shadow seemed alive, every creak in the floorboards a threat. The pounding continued, growing louder, more frantic. It wasn't just knocking now, it was trying to get in. I backed into the corner, the knife shaking in my grip. I could hear the whispers again, louder this time. Dozens of voices, all speaking at once, their words overlapping and tangling together until they became unintelligible. But there was one thing they kept repeating, clear as day. Let us in. The door rattled in its frame as the handle slowly turned. My breath hitched in my throat. The door creaked open just an inch. And then, nothing. Silence. I waited, listening for anything, a shuffle, a breath, a whisper, but there was nothing. The door hung ajar, revealing only the darkness beyond. I took a step forward, my foot landing with a soft creak. As I reached out to close the door, something caught my eye, movement in the shadows. My hand froze. There, just outside the threshold, I saw it. A figure, tall and impossibly thin, its face hidden beneath a tangle of dark hair. It was watching me. Before I could react, it darted inside, moving faster than I could follow, and then, nothing. The cabin was empty, but I could feel it somewhere, hiding, watching, waiting. The whispers came again, louder this time, closer. Let us in. I stood frozen, the knife slipping from my trembling fingers, clattering to the floor. I couldn't breathe. My eyes scanned the cabin, searching for the figure that had darted inside. But all I found was empty air and dark corners that seemed to close in on me. The whispers were louder now, pressing against my skull like 1,000 voices all around me, pulling at my sanity. They weren't coming from outside anymore. They were inside the cabin. I spun around, expecting to see the thing, but nothing was there. The door was still hanging open, a cold wind pushing the edges of the darkness inside. My heart pounded so loud I thought it would burst. Let us in, they whispered. We've always been here. I stumbled backward, my back hitting the wall as I tried to make sense of the words. The room felt different now, like I wasn't alone. The air had changed, thickened, as though something unseen was filling the space around me. I grabbed the flashlight and flicked it back on. The beam cut through the gloom, but instead of comforting me, it revealed something far worse. In the far corner of the room, something was moving. It was subtle at first, like the air itself was bending. But as I watched, a dark shape materialized, emerging from the shadows. It was tall, its limbs unnaturally long, its face still hidden behind that mass of hair. This time, it didn't run. It stood there, swaying slightly, as if it was breathing more, perhaps waiting. I felt my knees buckle. It wasn't alone. More shapes began to appear, one by one, from the dark corners of the cabin. I counted 3, then 4, their outlines barely visible against the walls. They stood there, silent, unmoving, but I could feel them staring at me. My breath came in ragged gasps. The knife was still at my feet, but I couldn't reach for it. Something held me in place, paralyzed with fear. The whispers were deafening now, wrapping around me like a shroud. Words that didn't belong to any language I understood, but still they called to me. Join us, they whispered. I backed up into the kitchen, heart pounding. My hand hit the countertop, and I felt the cool edge of the sink. I needed to escape, but where? The door was open, but I'd have to run past it. The shape by the door hadn't moved, but I knew if I ran, it would chase me. They all would. Suddenly, the room grew colder, an icy chill creeping down my spine. The lights flickered. When they came back, I wasn't in the cabin anymore. The walls stretched out, dark wood turning to cold stone, the ceiling impossibly high. I was standing in a hall, a long, endless hallway lined with doors. Each one was slightly ajar, with a soft glow spilling out from inside. I could hear something behind them, scratching, breathing, waiting. I spun in a circle, panic surging through me. How had I ended up here? Where was I? I rushed toward one of the doors, thinking it might be a way out. But as soon as I touched the handle, it slammed shut with a loud bang. The whispers were louder than ever. "We've been waiting for you," they said. "This is your home now." I backed away from the door, turning to run down the hall, but the walls seemed to stretch farther away with each step. Every door I passed slammed shut with a violent crack, the sounds echoing through the hall like gunshots. I kept running, faster and faster, but no matter how far I went, the hallway stretched on, endless. And then, I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps, pacing behind me. I didn't want to look back, I knew what I'd see. But something in those steps, the steady rhythm, pulled me. Against my will, I turned. At the far end of the hall, I saw it. The same figure, its hair hanging low over its face, limbs twisting unnaturally as it moved. It was walking toward me, slow and steady. And behind it, the other shapes followed, emerging from the shadows of the hallway. They were coming for me. I screamed, slamming my fists on the nearest door, desperate for a way out. But it wouldn't budge. The footsteps were getting closer, their pace never changing, but relentless in their approach. Then I felt it, cold fingers brushing against my neck, like icy tendrils wrapping around my skin. I spun around, but there was no one there. The hallway was empty again, but I wasn't alone. I could still hear them. They were inside me now. I could feel them, crawling beneath my skin, 1,000 whispers worming their way into my mind. My body wasn't my own anymore. The cold touch of their presence coiled inside me, twisting, gripping my thoughts. I stumbled back down the endless hall, every step heavier than the last, my mind screaming for escape. The footsteps behind me stopped. For a moment, There was nothing but silence. Then, a single voice, clear, like it was speaking directly into my ear, cut through the noise. Turn around. My body betrayed me before I could resist. My legs froze, my head turning against my will, the weight of something dark forcing my movements. And there it was, the figure, no longer in the distance, but right in front of me. Close enough that I could see the pale, mottled skin beneath the curtain of hair, the twisted, gnarled hands reaching out. But the face was the worst. It was mine. A grotesque, decayed version of my own face stared back at me. The mouth stretched into a horrifying grin, splitting the skin at the edges, revealing jagged, blackened teeth. The eyes empty pits, yet somehow, they were looking right into my soul. It reached out, its fingers brushing my cheek, cold and slimy like something long dead. I tried to scream, to move, to fight, but the air was heavy, thick like water, drowning me in place. It's time, it whispered, lips barely moving. The voice wasn't just in my ears, it was inside my head, filling every corner of my mind, suffocating me. You belong to us now. My vision blurred, darkness creeping from the edges, as if the hole itself was swallowing me whole. I could feel my consciousness slipping, the grip of reality loosening. I wasn't me anymore, I was becoming them. But then something shifted, the hole flickered, the cold stone turning back to wood. The endless doors blinked away, replaced by the familiar, claustrophobic walls of the cabin. I gasped, pulling air back into my lungs as I found myself standing again in the middle of the room. The fire had died down to embers, casting long, sinister shadows on the walls. The cabin was empty. The door was still open, swaying slightly in the wind. Outside, the night was quiet, no whispers, no figures, just the stillness of the forest. Had it all been a hallucination, a nightmare? I felt lightheaded, my mind still spinning from the horror of what I had seen, of what had been inside me. I stumbled toward the door, desperate to escape, desperate to breathe fresh air. I crossed the threshold and stepped outside, but something was wrong. The air was thick and still, the sky unnaturally dark. The trees around the cabin loomed closer than before, twisted and gnarled, their branches like skeletal arms reaching for me. I turned back toward the cabin, hoping for some sign of reality, something to ground me. But when I looked at the window, I froze. There, staring back at me from inside the cabin, was my own reflection. It stood perfectly still, not matching my movements. Its eyes black, hollow, watched me with a knowing smile. It raised a hand slowly, pressing its palm against the glass, mimicking what I should have been doing. Then, behind the glass, the whispers returned, louder than ever. Let us in. And as I watched, my reflection's lips moved, forming the final words I would ever hear. You never left. I tried to scream, but no sound came. The darkness swallowed me whole, and I was gone, lost to the whispers, lost to them. I was never alone in the cabin. I had always been with them.